to try to do it in such a way that we also interact with all of you, our viewers at home, or listening in, tuner-ins at home, I should say, or watching online. And to help me actually delve deeper into the topic of books and books in the Fourth Industrial Revolution and the digitalization of information, I have a fantastic panel of colleagues and peers with me here tonight that are going to help me, as I said, delve deeper into the topic. And to my immediate right, I have Karabo Moleya, who is a knowledge manager at the law firm Fasken, which is a Canadian law firm that's incorporated into the Beldewa group of law firms. Not only is she the knowledge manager at at the Fasken law firm, she's also a librarian and actually worked as a librarian for almost 20 years. So it's lovely, Karabo, to have you with us, and it's going to be interesting to debate the two sides of things. You know, you come out of libraries, now you're managing knowledge manager at the law firm. So it's going to be interesting to hear more about the work that you do as well. Next to Karabo, dear colleague of mine, Maria from ARC, who is actually the executive director of our libraries here at the University of Johannesburg. And you might not know, or I hope you know, that we have 4 campuses, we have 4 libraries. It's a massive operation. And correct me if I'm wrong, Maria, I think we're the largest library in South Africa.
No, we're not quite the largest library, but we
I hope you could have edited that.
We are one of the biggest libraries for a university that has students that are in residence. So UNISA, for example, has got a much, much bigger library than we have.
But we're a residential university, so that's important. No, fantastic. Thanks for that, Maria. Thanks for that clarification. And next to Prof. Bamad, we have Dr. Abhijita Ade Ibjola, who's also a colleague of ours here at the University of Johannesburg. And he heads up the Technopreneurship Center, which I love that word, technopreneurship, here, in the School of Consumer Intelligence and Information Systems. A warm welcome to you as well. It's going to be lovely hearing more about what you do as well as the Technopreneurship Center with regards to the topic that we're debating tonight. My name, as some of you might know already who have followed us before, is Ylva Rodnigomede, and I am a professor of communication studies here at the university, but also quite recently, and I need to say this, stepped into a new role as the head of our international office. And of course, when we talk about the Fourth Industrial Revolution, we talk about global trends and a paradigmatic shift that is global phenomena and has everything to do with the world that we live in and internationalization. So I need to say that. Okie dokes. Without much further ado, my first question tonight to the panel, and I think I'm going to start with you, Abhijita, is about books. What happens to books in the digital era? Are they obsolete? Should we not have printed books anymore?
Okay, thank you for that question. I think it's good to start by thinking, what are books? Books is just a compilation of information and knowledge of somebody somewhere at some stage of some time. So if technology could provide us a way to access them as we proceed in our journey as evolving human beings, then books may actually disappear in their natural copies. We may actually, at some age, maybe in the next 200 years, get implants in our head because we've evolved as humans, and that implants could make us read in our minds. Who knows? But I'm not going to go that far for now. I'm just saying to you, books are still here. There are many devices you can read on, and right now many libraries all over the world have digital libraries. The numbers of people coming to the library is dropping. However, the position of the library is still very strong. There are many things the library can do for us today, and we will talk about that when you bring up around the question again.
Yes, no, for sure, I will do that. We will come back to the broader role of libraries, and particularly, like, you know, and I know that those are things that Maria will be and Karabo as well will be very apt to talk to. But staying then with the written word in the book, Maria, what are your thoughts on it on an overall level?
So I'm a historian by heart, or in my heart by nature. And I've been doing a little bit of work looking at the history of books and the history of libraries. And books have not always been in the format that we know them now. So initially, what we would consider a book was a scroll that you rolled out and then you rolled back together again. Then the next iteration was a book that was handwritten, very, very beautifully illustrated, and only a very few people could have access to books because they were so expensive. And then we had the advent of the printing press in the 1400s, and then books became more accessible. Some of you watching this might be young enough to remember when the pocketbook came onto the market. Small little books that you could stick in your pocket that were written in very, very small fonts so that they could pack lots and lots of information into this little book and sell it very cheaply. Now we live in an age where you can read your book on Kindle or any other device, but we also live in an age where you can now hear a book again. And so in some ways we're actually going back to the art of storytelling, the art of the audio book, which is the way most people consumed books for most of our history. So while the format in which a book, a collection of information, or a story is changing, I think our need for stories and our need for information is going to remain. So what we loosely term a book in its different formats is probably going to remain with us until it becomes an implant in our brains.
Terrible. I'm going to sort of take you'll answer to that as well. But is it as Maria says, and for me, for example, on a personal level, I read a lot, and I realize that more and more when I read academic works or just still fact-finding sort of more books that I like to go online and I like to read on a Kindle but when it comes to novels and reading for pleasure, I have a completely different relationship to books. And I want to lie in my bed and I want crumble pages and I want to feel and I like the smell of the book and so on. That might be just me, but yeah. What are your thoughts?
You're right. It's about the touch and the feel of paper, and you're satisfied. But I think what we need to do first is to address the culture of reading and look and improve it, promote it, amongst the community. And once we have done that, let's embrace digitization slowly and see where it takes us. So for me, I still say books, hard copies, we still need them. Let's improve society and then move on. Until we address that issue, then we can explore the fourth industrial revolution.
And the access issues that you raise in Karabo are hugely important. And maybe that's a way to, I hear you. There are various takes on this idea of should then, the topic as we framed it is, should books be shelved? So should we, not think about, the printed books anymore. We will talk a little bit more about it because I think there are a lot of angles to that to explore. But I think that what you have just raised, Karabo, is that access aspect of it. So when we talk about digital, we talk about technology, it's also an access thing. So we have access to technology on the one hand, but then of course we also have issues that are accessed then in terms of literacy. And an idea of a culture of reading, for example, and how we seek out information, and for what reasons we do it. Maria, as an executive director of the UJ libraries, you cater for students. The students have different needs, of course, but it's primarily academic needs, I imagine. What role do you see the book fulfilling in terms of the academic project?
Yes, I'm going to break that down into three different aspects. The first is the idea of the book and the idea of the hard copy book. What's really interesting is how much our students want to take out a hard copy book when they are learning for an exam. And I started to do a little bit more research into this, and it is very interesting. In America, a whole lot of research has come out in the last 5 years that shows when people need to learn for information. In other words, they want to read something which they want to understand and learn new information. They need to make notes. And there still seems to be something very powerful about the tactile aspect of learning. And this we know from pedagogy, that different people learn through different modalities. Some of us learn visually, others learn auditorily, others learn through a tactile feel of something. And the act of handwriting is very tactile and apparently helps us to remember things more than typing on our computer. And these are studies that have been done with young children that have grown up in a computer age. So I think the first thing is that the print versus online is a conversation around what you want to do with the book. The second aspect is what you alluded to, Ilva, our emotional connection to books. And many of us love the smell of the book, the feel of the book, the look of the book. And that is the emotional connection that we make to it. As much as we have a lot of academic works in our library, one of the most popular parts of our library, which has the highest amount of people taking things out, are actually the novels. So our novels, the novels that our librarians choose for our reading corner, are amongst the most used in our collection, which speaks to the fact that we as people want to learn about what it means to be in the world. We learn through stories, and this is as old as people and history, and especially in African culture. We are very, very good at telling stories. And then the third aspect of all of this is information, the importance of journal articles, for example, and academic work. And particularly with journal articles, there we see that people like to get those online. You want to be able to find it quickly, you want to access it fast. A lot of people skim journal articles because they're looking for specific information. But amongst students, what we see is when a journal article is specific to required reading for something that they are learning, then you see them wanting to print it out and have a hard copy.
It's interesting you talk about audiobooks, and I say that now almost like a pun, because we have a little bit of an audio problem right now. So I'm going to speak a little bit louder, and I hope that we can all do so. And Maria, you're getting feedback. You've done well. but hopefully that will be resolved. It's interesting that you point out that it is the novels that people come for. And of course, I don't sit on the data right now about how many novels I read on a Kindle, for example, vis-a-vis more factual-based books and information and so on. But it is an interesting thing. Do you think, and I'm going to turn to you now, Karabo, who have, now you're working for a law firm, particular requirements in terms of data storage information that is stored or that has to be catalog, inventories of records kept of information vis-a-vis in a library, which has a much greater span. Do you think because you're in a more confined space, or not confined, a more a space that's quite clearly defined about what the information needs are, that it's easier to digitalize than, for example, if you look at the space where Maria sits as a librarian over four different libraries over campus, and of course so many needs. We have so many different faculties, so many different departments, so many different needs basically to feed. Is it an easier transition into digital?
It is easier, but then again, in my space, we've got two sides. We've got our hard copies and we've got ebooks. But I still have my lawyers who still come to the library to request information from hard copies. They still feel comfortable in holding that book and going through the index, which will direct them to a paragraph or a page. So, you would promote an ebook and say, but we've got access electronically, but they would still prefer to have hard copies. So I think it's different space, different sector, different industry, but with us in the legal fraternity, I'm not sure if we've got audiences from the sector, but they would agree with me. Yes, we embrace digitization, but we still need our books.
It's interesting. So even in that sort of clearly defined, that's what I wanted to say, not confined, clearly defined space, that there's a sort of almost like a 50-50 take. Yes, some things can be digitalized, but there are other things that we become used to, and I think that's what you're pointing out as well, Maria.
Yeah.
I think that in many ways, and I think Abhijit, you sit in a entrepreneurial techno space and a technopreneurial space. Do you see that as well? That as much as you want to be entrepreneurial about this space, come up with new things, or maybe I should phrase it differently. What are the new things? Are there middle ways between the printed and the digital?
Yes. I would like to say there are other spaces.
Yeah.
In fact, there are things that you've not even imagined. So books, just like I said, it's a bulk of information. Experiencing that sometimes doesn't have to be in a particular channel. So with the advances in virtual reality, for example, in my space, we don't even have a single book, actually. We do research and everything. We go your way. We do online. However, we also embed information, a lot of information, in the virtual experience, where we give people a virtual environment to experience the information.
Yeah.
It's more fun. Sometimes it's video games. We call them serious games, where we put laws and rules of mathematical theorems in an environment you discover it. It's with a gamepad. It's fun. You explore. Students, we've realized that also, if you look at the accounts of literature, recent literature, like say 20 years back, they've seen serious games as the way to go in teaching pedagogy models, as opposed to the traditional means, because your so-called digital natives from 2000s to date don't like to flip the thing, and I know the smell thing. I'm also from the smell generation of books, but then those guys are different. So we're looking at the future on my side, where it's visual, it's augmented, it's extended reality. You're in the room actually reliving an experience of a book.
Yeah.
The book is a storybook, like you rightly said, and it had, say, 10 paragraphs in a chapter. All of the story in that paragraph is not going to be a movie like we've seen it in our history. It's going to be a digital experience where when I wear my VR goggles, I can go into a room and relive everything again from a 360 angle, watch people cry, watch people celebrate. And when I get out of the book, I like to use that phrase, I can truly feel like I have read every line of that book. So that's what I'm looking for in my space.
And I think that is important, and it comes up again and again from all three of you, is this idea of the reading experience.
Yeah.
And that is of course very different. So it's not so that we can necessarily talk about an either-or scenario, I think, that books are going to be obsolete, because actually they fulfill a different function than an audiobook, for example, or reading then on a tablet.
No, not completely, if I may interrupt you.
No,
I wouldn't think that books would become obsolete. I wouldn't think so. I think like we would always have the generation that want a book on a train where there's no Wi-Fi. A book at times of the day, like you rightly said, when your students had assignment, they checked out books. You know why? They're afraid that when they leave the library and they slept 2 hours in their residence, and they want to work 2 a.m., they may not want to come back to the library. That's why they're doing that. So it's accessibility to internet, data, all these things. A hard copy of anything in the world means you've got backup. So backup is what that assures you. Also, historical hard copies are different from A4 papers. So if I am in a library where there are scrolls, I don't want to read scrolls on the screen. I want to hold them in my hands, because the fabric and the texture of the material is also different. It tells the history of everything. So I just see a future library where you have a specific room for experiencing this age we're in, and you have other rooms for serious gaming, virtual reality, and people can experience books in other ways, but it's more room for the old school people like all of us on the panel.
I hear you. And I find that fascinating. I'm turning to you now, Maria, specifically, because here comes the mother question. So what happens? What's the changing role of a library?
Right. So the changing role of a library is manifold. The first is, as Jide said, this way that we're going to be accessing information in different ways. So my dream is in 3 years' time, I would love to have multiple rooms which are virtual reality spaces, where you don't read about the skeletal structure, you enter into the skeletal structure. That kind of learning, I think, is just as important as having it in a book. I think that sort of experiential learning is always going to be mirrored or twinned with some form of written text. So from this little snippet that I've just said, you can see how I think the library is going to be a completely different space.
Yeah.
My second thing is, as much as I personally love books, my husband is not a reader. My husband is an engineer and he adores movies and series. And I've come to see that it's a different form of book. It's a different way of learning, experiencing, understanding things. So the idea, what is a book? A book is a collection of ideas. It is a story. It is a form of information. That's never going to leave us. And the series, the way we experience it at the moment, is very much like a novel writ large. The second aspect to the library is actually back-end stuff that people don't see. And that is the currency of tomorrow is data. But data is only as good as how that data is catalogued and understood. Who are the people that are experts at this? Our librarians. They are trained in metadata. And so I think we are going to see more people actually becoming librarians and working in that form of libraryship. So this managing data, understanding data, cataloging it, etc. And then I think the third aspect to libraries, in at least the next century that we're living in, is going to be libraries as social spaces. We've begun to see that at UJ. Our most common spaces are our discussion rooms, and a university like the Max Planck Institute in Germany, they don't have a library with any books in it, but they have space. They have space where people come and meet. So they discuss everything on their tablets and devices, but for them, the library is a meeting space. And that's why I like to use the word library rather than information center, because it harks back to that conversation, that engaging with information. And that's what we love doing as humans. We are curious beings.
No, for sure we are. I think lawyers are equally curious, aren't they? But what is the sort of knowledge management system then? And is there changing role even in that space?
Look, what happens is we've got a system, a knowledge system, that assists the lawyer to get the information, that has been previously prepared by another lawyer. It saves time, obviously, and everything else. But I'm still to see a system, an artificial intelligence system or fault IR system, where a lawyer would say to the system, I need a legal definition for ordinary day, or on normal day or every day in a legal perspective. And the system would give him, would do retrospective research and give him results as to, in 1926 it was defined in this legislation. There was a commentary in such and such a case, and there was something written recently, but it also referred back to 1926. Until that happens, but that is my ultimate. That's where I want to see our space moving into. As for now, unfortunately, we still have to go back in time, do retrospective research ourselves, find the information and give it to the lawyer.
No, I hear you. I mean, I think it's, sorry, I come to you now. I think it's very interesting, and I want to link it back to something that Maria said as well, and I think it's coming up online here as well, is this idea of the need, yes, we are curious as human beings, but we also have real needs, and for students it's that need of, information about the topic that you're researching. For a lawyer it will be the same, And I think that what we often forget is this idea that, and I think, people are talking, I promise I'm going to come back to some of the debates that are happening online now as well. But it's interesting to see then that the role of libraries have not changed, but there are add-ons. So the social spaces, for example, is becoming more connecting people, and so it's becoming more important maybe, particularly in the university setup, supposedly. But coming back to this idea then of seeking out information for needs, and that's what we do, and that's not going to change. From a technological perspective, Abhijit, will that change? Because could you then just move it all online?
Yes, okay. I pretty much like what Karabo pointed out. What she's trying to say, I can sum it up in two terms: analytics and search. The information in that domain is still there. Just that they find it difficult to build software on top of it to cross-reference and find them exactly what they want. Well, the good news is, in the current age, you don't only find what you want. You even find what you want with text, free-form text, even voice, speech. All of that is what we are building in the Techno Center, for example. So if we have access to the kind of database you want, and you want something from 1922, as long as it's in there, we can cross-reference and get you that. So every library in the world has a lot of information. Searching, indexing are things that, Maria, I believe you're an expert in those things. Digitizing those things out is what we do to make sure the accessibility, and you don't have to spend time doing it. In fact, indexing and search is one of the reasons why people prefer online sources, because you can easily get access to information. I think it's a quite interesting way to look at it. Well, let's just say your legal firm wants to talk to you, Jay. We are open for business.
I like that. We're always open for business, particularly when it comes to innovation and innovative spaces. And libraries are exactly that, aren't they, Maria? And I want to feed something I think is beautiful, something that Jonathan Houston says online. Libraries need to be redefined from the place where knowledge is categorized and stored to a place where ideas and connections are incubated and nurtured.
Exactly. Can't agree more. And that's why at UJ we run so many events, book launches, discussion spaces, because that's exactly what we're trying to do. Get people to come and to connect with ideas.
I think if I may add on that, as scientists at UJ, the UJ library has given us such a platform to actually exhibit our work and to engage with industry partners. So anytime we don't want to remain restrained into the lab, we just talk to UJ Library, because UJ Library has moved on from the traditional library. They've become like the sales person of every information out there, everything, pretty much.
And that's what librarians love to do. We love to collect information and share it. And I think that's why libraries, in inverted commas perhaps, will continue, because our job is to find, store and share information, and that's what we love doing, whether it's book form or some of Dr. G's most amazing new inventions.
And also to add on, I think the role of the library and the role of the librarian has changed. You know, and there is so much change, to an extent that that's why we now call libraries knowledge centers, because there is so much knowledge, and the person that's in that library has so much knowledge that you can't take it away from them. I mean, they are the custodian of information.
They really are. And it's interesting. I mean, I'm just thinking, and I can't remember, but I was in high school, so during the time, and I worked for a summer at the local library, and I grew up in a very small town, very, very tiny little town, and there was the local library. But I was fascinated. It was I got soaked up in it, I was immersed in this library. And of course I was, tasked with putting books back on shelves. That's what I did. And as I'm putting them back, I started to read them. And in a small library, it's difficult to hide. So I was the worst, sort of intern.
Worst shelver
they've ever had. But I loved it. I loved it. I really, really loved it. And I'm thinking that actually the idea of, as you say, being a custodian and loving, this idea of helping, facilitating, imparting, whether you do it for a bigger crowd or for, the lawyers that you serve, and I imagine that it's all about, and I think this goes to your role as well in the techno space and as a technopreneur, it's finding, and it talks back to this idea of me, it's finding how you best cater for. Whether that is from an, technological perspective, an online perspective, or that idea of actually you as a knowledge manager, Kara, was sitting talking to me because I have a particular need. I'm working, I imagine, as a lawyer on a particular case. I need to know everything. And just forging those relationships. I know our academic librarians do the same. You cater for particular departments or particular faculties, for example. But it must be so. And I want to hear all your takes on this.
I think if I may come in there, we've all agreed that the future library is going to have a particular form and shape. Not every library out there is looking forward like the UJ library is currently doing. I would like to point out that there are some operations of the library now that are regarding routine stuff that currently in the world robots are doing. So robotics in a library is something we've not even spoken about. You spoke about shelving books. That job you were doing then when you were a little does not exist anymore in most libraries of the world. Because from the tag on the book you can tell which shelf it was picked from. And a robot can move around. It doesn't even have to be a pretty robot like your paper. It could just be a mechanical thing. We call it automated machine. Comes, put everything on the stack, scan the books using image recognition, and goes and stack it back into the right shelf. So many operations of the current day library would disappear. And I think that was the question we actually meant to ask when we said, would books still be around? Books will be around, they'll get smaller in quantity. There'll be some time books will be in the museum for kids that were born in 1975 or 2075, for example, 2080, to come and see what a book looks like. That day may come at some point. We're not going to wake up tomorrow and see that day. I don't think so. But I believe gradually there will be things that are routine that the computer could take care of, and as humans we could then focus on things that are much more cognitive, like analytics. So every role in software and machine industry, a librarian would have to pick one tiny skill. And again, I always tell people, it doesn't mean you're going to get a degree in this thing. All you need is a skill in this thing, which are two different things. A skill is a 6 weeks workshop on how to post something on a website. So a librarian will become a data analyst, or a metadata analyst, or a web expert in something, comparative data analyst in books and dynamics of books and things like that. And then they can tell you that this room gets more attention because of these things over time. These are the things that Maria already does in our space. So in future we look at a space where I think could get bigger and more technology could be in that space. And with robotics, the routine stuff may disappear.
And that's exactly what we're thinking about at the University of Johannesburg. So our shelvers now have each have a mobile phone, and the mobile phone you just put in front of a row of books, and it reads, have these books been misshelved? What is missing? Gives you real-time stock taking. And because the shelvers are not checking that every single book is in the right place, they have a lot more time. So they've now had training on our databases and how to use that, and they've now become the frontline customer service people. So libraries are changing, but the need for human interface in the space of knowledge, I think, is not going to go away. There's still going to be a young person who comes in and goes, I'm learning about water pollution, and I'm not quite sure how to do this. And the more information we have, the more overwhelming it is. So people say to me, why do we need a librarian? I can just look it up on the catalogue. And I say to academics, well, if you're only looking at work that has been published, you're only looking at part of what's out there. You need to start looking at what's happening in social media, because that's where some of the most cutting information is. You need to look at policy documents, case studies, all these different things, and you need to start bringing that into your research. Now, as a normal, everyday academic, I do not have the time to go through all of that. But this is where librarians come in. We're skilled in using the software, and we can help you with those sorts of things.
And I see you making notes.
Okay, Karabo, you can go for this one, but come back to me.
I just want to agree with Dr. G there, where he says, we need to embrace it is coming. It is not yet here. It is coming. We need to embrace it. Yes, I completely agree. And at the same time, I want to say, I think, it's different space, different sector. I'm still going back to my law library.
Okay.
Yes, we've got ebooks, and we've got students coming from your universities into our law firms to do their articles, and they come to you, and the first thing they tell you is about Google. I mean, like, really, you want to become the best lawyer, and you're telling me about Google. What happened to research skills? That's where the librarian comes in. That's where the librarian comes in, and research starts with a hard copy to say this is your starting point, and oh, by the way, this is all available electronically. So yes, we are embracing it. We are using the resources, but I think what we also need to do is to improve for universities. This goes out to you. Improve and nurture the skills of your students so that when they come to the working world, where everything is happening practically, then they can be able to move on.
If I may touch down on that, so I'm the bearer of bad news every time. Why? Because I talk technology.
No, that's not a bearer of bad news.
That's a joke. Okay, so here's the thing about that skill of a librarian to point you to the right resource. That skill will also soon disappear. May I remind you, now we have algorithms in NLP that knows what every librarian in the world knows. So, and they have more resources than a librarian can ever think of. So a librarian probably is formed of 3, 4, 10 books, 20 books that actually address this issue, pointing to a particular shelf. However, because of the depth of information on the World Wide Web, an AI algorithm would have access to, say, 5 billion of those. That's more than 1,000 libraries, big libraries put together, Library of Congress included. Now, when you look at that, the AI just needs to do stuff like natural language generation to write a literature review for you. The future is that we would have algorithms that you can say, here's my research topic, help me. Like, do you want me to give you a literature review? Like, I wouldn't mind. How many pages would you want? 20 pages. And then just see a loading, what's it called, progress bar. You can download the PDF now. And to be original, if you test it on Turnitin or any plagiarism checker, it will be original. You know why that is possible? It's possible because of the rules that are available for an AI to use. A book and the other next material, if you give the topic, from the topic it can map out all the things that need to be done and then do it. I think the future library, however, has librarians that are much more technical, if I may say.
Yes, definitely.
Right now we have librarians that are technical and also physically available to put in manpower. They may not even require much manpower in future. They may require what's it called, a mentor power, if there's anything like that, where they actually think more to give you analytics, and they can be part of these tools that we're going to build, because we are building these tools. They're going to happen. If we don't, Europe and Americans will build it.
And I think that is exactly the role of the librarian going forward. It's going to be, as Karabo was saying, to teach people how to manage and find all this information, because you want to look at water pollution, but you don't want a 50-page document on this. So that's part A. But part B is around the critical analysis of all this information. So the more information we have, the more we need to learn to become critical of it. What does it mean? How do we apply it? And that's where the human side comes in.
So I'm going to shift the discussion a little bit, and it's coming up quite pertinently through the online discussion as well, and that is about access. So access to libraries, access to reading, access to books. Does technology hinder, does the digitalization or the digital revolution hinder the access to libraries, to knowledge, or does it open it up?
I think that's along the lines of technological discrimination, I like to call it. If you're in a township, there's no electricity, you don't have a device. For you, it's Indus. You want a physical library now. You want to be in the age of 20 years ago. However, if you're in the World Wide Web and you're fourth industrial revolution, you're tech, all of your things are IoT devices, then you prefer to access it anytime you want. You don't want it to get to you first. You want to have a speech in your house where your screen shows up information about something.
Yeah.
So I think there's no one answer to that. It depends on who you are, what devices you have in your hand. That's how I would like to answer that.
You know, before we continue, it's something interesting actually, and I'm gonna read it out. And it's Lydia Creamer who says online that, you know, I'm playing the devil's advocate here. She says, you know, but is it fair to, you know, when people don't have access, and you know, particularly in the context of South Africa and Africa, to throw them into this digital revolution without, you know, the requisite.
Maybe you want to answer that? I can answer. Carbo, do you want to go?
Carbo, you go, then I go.
Okay, yeah.
I don't want to.
I think Lydia is right. We need to look into access versus ownership. I mean, like you're saying, you in the rural areas, you don't have access to electronics, to technology. You don't have money to buy data. But there's a library around the corner where you can get that book. So I think it's just an issue of access versus ownership. Are we ready? Is it happening, and is everybody going to have access to the digital book?
I would like to say it's not going to be everyone. So let's clarify that first. Even if we live in the year 2050, it still won't be everyone. You all agree that there's always that farm place you drive to when you want to have like a vacation, and everybody switch off to their mobile phone, and then you can relate to that. So there'll be a time where there's so much tech. You agree with me that mobile phones became popular in the early 2000s. Up to today, not everybody still has one. Not even the internet one, just a simple one. So I don't think that they would come where everyone is going to have access to anything, even technology aside. But I would like to say that for the future, an example is the prisons. And the prisons, you have to make a balanced decision. Do you want to give them internet to have access to books? Or do you want to allow them on the World Wide Web to do other things when they are on the inside? So access is a different debate from books and libraries, in my opinion. Books and libraries are like everything we all always have access to. We just need to see medium. Do you have a medium? Yes, there you go. You don't have a medium, then here's a traditional library for you. So the society, the community, the government still has to make provisions, or establish other stakeholders for those two libraries side by side, and not just for the next 10 years, maybe the next 50, because there'll be people that wouldn't always have access to the digital one.
But we're still struggling with literacy issues though, and I imagine that those are greater issues for you, Maria, than it would be for Karabo. Our lawyers have a certain level of education already. We assume that our students have that supposedly when they enter university, but it's still quite uneven. So the access issues remain, not only the technological, that they also still remain the literacy issues.
So we were talking about this as a group of librarians the other day, and we were saying that really there are two access points. There's digital information access, and then information literacy. So digital literacy and information literacy. And really, as librarians, we need to be dealing with both of these. And we've started talking about ourselves as being a bridge. So the first year student comes in, and many of our students will come from areas where there is haphazard electricity or no electricity. They know about computers, and they've sort of worked a little bit on computers, but they've never had their own device. And so when I was talking about the shelvers, I see the work of people like our shelvers and our traditional circulation staff moving to becoming teachers in the library, who are going to teach people how to use the new apps, the new ways of accessing information. And then we will also have our librarians teaching information literacy, so that in some ways we're going to become teachers as much as anything else in the library. But the second part is this whole discussion of open access and the move to open access information, which I think is really exciting. And there is so much will, particularly in North America and Europe, towards open access information. And I think that is very exciting, because it does make good academic research available at a far reduced cost. But again, you need to have data in order to access it.
So,
So this is a very bumpy and uneven road that
Yeah.
we're going to go on.
now I want to turn to you, Karab, and I want to continue with that because it's something that I've been thinking about and this is that Maria and I touches upon. So for lawyers, for example,
Yes.
I imagine that this is a world, the law literature, and then particularly when we talk about access to particular cases and so on, it's been quite a closed off world to many. It's not so, law firms keep their own records, their own libraries.
Yes.
Well, is there an opportunity now for opening up to the public, making it accessible to a broader layer of the public or a broader audience?
Look, it's a matter of the lawyer and the client,
Yeah.
right? So if the case goes to court and it's heard at a court, obviously the public will have access. But if it's a matter that involves a transaction, then it's between the lawyer and the client. Unfortunately, that is quite tricky. I can't say I see a day where you can go into a law firm and say, can I have a file where a transaction or an acquisition of this company was dealt with. I don't see that happening, but it's closed information and accessible to internal people. So I can go into the system and I can search and I can see what's been done on that particular matter. But for the public, I don't see that happening. There are legal implications.
I think for the confidentiality of our space,
Yes.
you can agree. It's the same thing as medical space. In medicine, you may not search who was the last guy to have this virus because it is confidential.
Data access and data privacy,
Yeah, privacy
it's
issues, yeah.
it's the rights
Yeah.
versus responsibility.
There's another aspect to this debate, and that is the contracts that publishers set in place. So as much as e-books are wonderful because you can access them easily, we can't do interlibrary loans with electronic books because publishers prevent us from doing that. When Karabo buys journals and books, but particularly journal databases, she signs something that says, I will not make this available to other people because the rate that I get charged at as an academic librarian versus what she gets charged as a commercial library are very different. So there's another layer here that has to do with publishing and contracts with publishing houses.
Of course, so those are the legal aspects, and it's interesting now because there's also a little bit of a discussion going on online about cybercrime, and of course these are the things that people are scared of. That people are just downloading, and of course we know in an academic space as well plagiarism and so on. What do we open ourselves up to? But those are separate, and I think those are things we can discuss in other spaces. But yeah,
I would like to touch first on what Maria said when it came to what the future librarian will be able to do.
Yeah.
Going back to becoming a teacher. They would have to become teachers, I agree, and they will have to even be more. They will have to be designers of these apps. So I would like to tell you there's no expert out there, no computer science, there's no engineer actually knows what these librarians know right now in terms of how this whole system works. So you find yourself with a development team in future with 4 experts, engineers or software developers, and 2 librarians to give them the knowledge to build this thing that would work. Otherwise it will fail. It's like a system study thing. Finally, they will have to become technicians because right now the UJ library, something is broken, you have to go to the Central Technical Unit, which is the ICS at UJ. But right now, imagine you've got about 10 or 15 guys at the UJ library. They're librarians, but they can actually write a piece of code to fix something quickly. So you have people like that. Around the interlibrary loans, however, I think it's a policy issue. We could do with that.
Oh, we're trying. We're trying to set up a consortium, or the consortium that exists in South Africa. We're trying to sort of come together and say to publishers, come guys.
If you come to
Change
a
your
unit,
mind.
Yes, you charge us the same for a hard copy versus an e-book, and the hard copy we can share via interlibrary loan, the e-book we can't. There's a problem here.
Also, you can show them how bureaucratic that is, because if I sent my authentication, username and password UJ to someone in maybe Cape Town, they could as well just download the same book and it will be fine. So those are policy issues. I don't think technology has a problem with those ones.
I hear you, and an hour goes very,
Very
very, very
fast,
fast.
I know, yeah.
And it's interesting because we actually have Lutu Mtungana with us online. And she says an hour is not enough. Thank you for that, Lutu. To discuss these things, because it is, there's so much we can say and we should be saying, and you think that you will have enough time to delve really deep into things, but as conversations go, I've taken away a lot of things, and I'm going to give you all a chance to come back to some of the things that we have picked up on in the discussion, to sort of just briefly wrap up. And I mean, my sense is that we are all very clear on that there are different needs, there are different roles that we play, there are technology as enabling, but access issues will always be there, or not, hopefully not always, but they are there. Looking ahead, looking into a future, near and far. Futures are both near and far. They're happening as we speak. What do you foresee for knowledge management? And I think knowledge management is such a beautiful word, or knowledge access and knowledge management and all of these things that we are talking about. What does the future hold for knowledge management and books, and whether online or digital or the hard copies that we have? What is there for us?
I think knowledge management is very broad, and it's interpreted differently from one organization to the next. With us in the law firm, in the legal fraternity, we are safe, and because we've got our own internal knowledge systems, and the lawyers have embraced it, and they use the system, and it's working. But then we also need to consider the socio-economic issues. I mean, are we really going to take we are now faced with a high rise of unemployment, and if you're saying we looking into doing away with books, we've got packers, we've got shelvers. What's going to happen to them? Yes, they can empower themselves. They can learn new things, but not everybody is going to be able to do that. We really need to be considerate of such issues. Embrace change, however scary it is. We need to embrace it, but we also need to look into, maybe empower them. Maybe that's when Dr. G comes in. I'm going to give you all these shelvers to you, empower them and bring them into your technological world.
Yes.
Maria?
So I think the future of libraries is incredibly exciting. I think we're going to see libraries that will have virtual reality spaces. My big dream is to see librarians really becoming part of research teams as they help to find different information that's needed. And I think that the idea of the book as a place that stores information, or holds information rather, and the book that tells a story, I don't think that is going to go away anytime soon. It may change its shape, but I think it's going to be with us for as long as we want to hear stories.
Yeah, stories, information, stories. Abhijita?
I think
What's
for
your
me,
buzzword?
the library is craving for a lot of technology. It's not even the word invading the library space. With technology, it's the library itself craving for it. Because the library realized about 10 years ago that when we don't introduce this tech, especially the digital library you have, we are going to lose many people. Some people still come with a hard copy and they want it, but then most times it's not like an either or. So I see a future where the library is a compartment of different departments. You go walk into the library, to your right is a gaming room. All you have to go in is your algebra class that you were struggling to understand the concepts of integration, this whatever it is you are struggling. You get into the room with a gamepad, you step into a 5 level of game when you're done after 6 hours, because digital natives love to game. You step out understanding all of the concepts that your lecturer couldn't explain to you. The room from after that is virtual reality, extended reality, augmented reality. Then we have a room that is special, that is quiet for the people that like to smell the book. So all of these things can work together.
Exactly.
Like Karabo's industry, for example, what I think that industry needs is this fantastic software that can search information that we already have today. and it doesn't have to be made public. It could be designed for your needs as a legal firm. So you may want to like pick up there and everything. But yeah, I think that's just a picture I see going forward.
I mean, it's interesting. We you touched upon something there but also we haven't had time really to delve into generations and generational gaps. But maybe those generational gaps are not going to be as massive as we all become more technologically savvy and so on, provided then once again that we do have access.
Access, yes.
So thank you. I mean, thank you very, very much. I think it's been amazing. It's fantastic, and we really don't have enough time, and we need more time. And what I take away is that actually books will not be shelved. We're just changing the shelf somehow.
That's a nice way. We're changing the shelf.
And some will remain in scrolls and hoard books.
Yes.
There could be museums later. There could be museums, but then some will be shelved. Actually.
You think so?
Yeah. 100 years from now.
That might well be. Yeah. But it's interesting, and I want to thank you, and I want to thank our audience at home, as always, I follow your discussions, which I find absolutely fascinating, and I can't feed it all into the discussions here. We need to have a separate, actually, Cloudebate where we only engage with the online audience, I think, to channel things. And I think that, this is fantastic. You're an amazing audience online, always, and I truly appreciate that. And I do hope that you will also tune in to our next Cloudebate, which will be on the 8th of October. So note that date down, where we're actually going to talk about technology from enabling perspectives, and particularly for people with disabilities. And we're going to have a panel discussion about it. And I think that when we talk about technology, it is about enabling. Whether we talk about it, from the perspective of libraries giving access to information, or in bigger spaces, and I think that's going to be an interesting discussion as well. So don't miss out. 8th of October, Enabling Technologies, and with the focus then on people with disabilities. Thank you. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you very much for having us.
God bless.
Thank you.